The day frontier delays peaked at 6 hours. Tonight, all the latest reactions were live on GBC Television, Radio Gibraltar and online. Good evening and welcome to a special edition of Newswatch this Sunday evening. Today, frontier queues peaked at 6 hours following a week of massive delays at the frontier. The Gibraltar government has called on the UK to take the matter up with Spain at the highest level. It's condemned the deliberate delays and has convened a cabinet meeting for tomorrow morning to discuss and determine a sustained local and international response to the latest hostile actions taken by the Spanish government against Gibraltar. The government has already contacted parliamentarians in the House of Commons, House of Lords and the European Parliament. And the Chief Minister, Fabian Picardo, who is in London for the Gibraltar Day in London events, will tomorrow also be raising this with the guests at the event. We'll be speaking to Mr. Picardo shortly, but first, Jonathan Scott has this report.
By lunchtime today, many Gibraltarians who might normally cross into Spain for a spot of lunch in the Campo area might have been thinking twice about doing so. To cap one of the ROC's worst weeks for queuing in living memory, delays for motorists built up steadily from early on in the morning. The reason for the delays over the weekend, just 20 metres behind me. The Guardia Civil has been taking up to 5 minutes per vehicle, conducting thorough searches when normally all you'd need is to show your passport and within seconds you'd be across the frontier. On Saturday, it appeared Gibraltar cars were being targeted by the Civil Guard, who made it a point of pulling G-plates to one side to carry out the sort of thorough search that one might expect when someone is suspected of carrying contraband, such as tobacco, across the land frontier. The reality, of course, is that most Gibraltarians had much more honest intentions when crossing. We witnessed how one Gibraltarian man, obviously going away for a few days, was asked to open his suitcase so the Guardia Civil officer could painstakingly search through it. And, although difficult to believe, by Sunday the process had become even slower. The reason for the 4-hour queues appears to be simple. Every single car, regardless of whether they're in the red or the green channel, is being stopped and searched by the Guardia Civil. Okay, can you tell me how long you've been waiting, sir?
Since 12:30.
And the time is?
4:30.
4:30.
4:30, that's 4 hours.
È una vergogna. Shame on them, honest.
It's terrible, it's all political.
It's all political, not tobacco.
Another thing, we don't want dictators in Europe. And that's what Rajoy is.
Dictatorship todo.
Dictatorship. Franco's gone. And all Europe is democratic.
They wouldn't do this to the Moroccans, or to the French, or to the Catalans,
we don't want
or the
this.
Basques.
This is inhumane. Human rights have to come into it. The elderly, the children. I mean, we had to find a toilet. I mean, heck. But imagine the elderly people. And especially in the summer. Oh, with more heat than this.
It's disgraceful.
Soy diabética y me ha dado una bajada de azúcar. Y no tengo ni, vamos, porque me han dado un bollo y un trozo de queso. Si no me da algo ahí. Entonces no hay derecho.
I did not anticipate the long queue, really.
But it's a necessary journey that you're making. You're going back home?
Yeah, I'm going back home at the moment, yes.
Okay, so is this something which is affecting your quality of life on a daily basis at the moment?
Yes, it is, yes. Of course it is. I mean, less hours of rest and basically long shifts and then coming to actually on a queue, which is not fair. The only good point is I'm listening to Gibraltar Radio for 3 hours.
That's una poca vergüenza. It's absolutely disgusting, really.
Also on hand today to lend practical support throughout the day, as they have done for most of the week, the group of concerned citizens who call themselves Defenders of Gibraltar. And then, just as quickly as the queues had built up, they seemed to be removed. At approximately 9:30 tonight, the queues started to move much quicker before disappearing altogether. This is not the way that these people behind me will have wanted to spend their Sunday evenings, queuing up to cross into Spain. According to government and RGP figures, it's been taking the Guardia Civil up to 10 times as long as normal to check through vehicles, and we've already said that they've been checking cars in the green as well as the red lanes. It's been a terrible week for those crossing the frontier. I think people on both sides will be hoping that a new week brings a better situation, but I think that's more hope than expectation.
Jonathan Scott at the frontier tonight, and the latest from the border is that the queue has now cleared. There is no queue to drive into Spain. Well, this evening, a Foreign Office spokesman has told GBC they are aware of the latest frontier delays and are protesting about them at national and local level. GBC understands the Spanish Foreign Embassy in London has been contacted. And the Chief Minister has said he's liaising with the Foreign Office and that bullying will not be tolerated. As we've been reporting, Fabian Picardo is in London and he now joins us live on the line from the city. Mr. Picardo, a very good evening to you.
Good evening to you, James.
Thank you very much for joining us. Well, you're in London, Gibraltar Day in London tomorrow. Are you going to be meeting with ministers at the highest level about this?
Absolutely. And let me tell you, James, and let me tell our people, that these despicable acts actually create a historic opportunity for Gibraltar. Look, there comes a time and there comes some events in our history when we all have to stand together. And as the elected representatives of the people of Gibraltar, today, my government and I, as Chief Minister, really call on all Gibraltarians and all civic and political forces in Gibraltar to be united in facing these absolutely despicable actions. There really is now, James, too much at stake here for our ruthless opponents to see us divided in any way. Because this is an opportunity to show the world just how Spain behaves when she says that she is a 21st century democracy, an EU partner of the UK and a NATO partner of the UK. This is how our purported partner deals with British citizens.
So it's time to stand united, but the people of Gibraltar don't want strong words, they want strong action.
Absolutely, and that is what we are seeking. We are seeking strong action from those responsible in the Foreign Office for the relationship with Spain. We are seeking that they do more than just send notes across to the Spanish embassy. We want there to be action on these issues at the very highest level.
Now, in your statement today, you say the delays affect principle the freedom of movement, that these are excessive and disproportionate. How does Spain get away with this?
Well, Spain gets away with it if we don't stand up to her. The time has come for us to
but
really
it's got away for the
stand
last
up
week.
to what
Isn't
is
that a
happening
week too
by
long,
taking
Mr. Picardo?
action, whether we need to take it in the courts or whether it needs to be taken politically and diplomatically. The Spaniards have had it too easy until now. We need to show that we mean what we say about not putting up with this bullying, and the United Kingdom must also show that she means what she says.
But how vital is that support from the UK? Because these queues have been ongoing for 5 or 6 hours for the last week.
This support is of course vital, and we must be acting together with the United Kingdom on these issues. These are not isolated incidents, James. This has happened before, as you know. Even last year, we had 4-hour queues. But this time, the Spanish government has shown how linked this is to its policy on Gibraltar. This could be today about tobacco, tomorrow about fishing, the next day about water, but every day it is about sovereignty. And that is why we are never going to give in to this bullying, because at the end of the day, we know exactly what Spain wants, and we're never going to give her an inch of the sovereignty of Gibraltar.
In your opinion, are these queues also perhaps related to your stand on the fishing dispute?
In my opinion, these queues are related to what they are always related to, which is Spain's desire to recover the sovereignty of Gibraltar by hook or by crook, whether it's the sovereignty of the seas around Gibraltar or the sovereignty of the land and people of Gibraltar. And the people of Gibraltar wouldn't put up with it. Let me tell you one thing, James. I know, as you do, I'm sure, that everything that is said on Gibraltar television and in the Gibraltarian newspapers is monitored in Madrid. Let the message be united from all political and civic forces in Gibraltar that Gibraltar will not put up with this. Señor Margallo, we know you're listening. It's time for you to wake up and come into the 21st century.
In the interim, and whilst we await that solution, what are the possibilities for a day like tomorrow? Because, of course, today was Sunday and people, or many people, were not working. But if it gets worse tomorrow, will you be capping, for example, the number of vehicles that drive into Gibraltar? Or will you at least perhaps have information officers advising people that if they come into Gibraltar, it could take them all day to then exit?
We are producing a letter to pass on to people who are in the queue, explaining the reasons for the queue and informing them of how they can make a complaint. We have no intention of curtailing the freedom of people to come into Gibraltar, and we will behave responsibly both in relation to those who visit Gibraltar and those who work in Gibraltar and live outside Gibraltar. So we have absolutely no intention of curtailing the traffic into Gibraltar. We will behave responsibly, because what Mr. Bellegallo is doing today and what his colleagues in the Spanish government are doing today is not the future, it's the past. We have to behave responsibly to those who work in Gibraltar, who live outside Gibraltar, because that is the future, understanding each other as modern European partners as we should be.
A cabinet meeting called for tomorrow. We're hearing from your traffic and transport minister that you're looking at more holding areas for vehicles. Do we read into that your government expects more queues to come this week?
What you can read into that is that my government will be ready for anything that Spain throws at us.
Okay, and if Spain continues to throw these delays, continues to throw these stringent checks at the border, and the UK does not back you up strongly as the people of Gibraltar expect, what is your area of recourse?
I am convinced that the UK will back us up strongly as the people of Gibraltar expect. I believe that Mr. Hague understands these issues very well and that he is on the side of the people of Gibraltar and no one else. But I must tell you, if Spain stops behaving like a member of the European Union, then she must be treated by the United Kingdom and Gibraltar as if she was not a member of the European Union.
Mr. Hague, who will not be tomorrow at the Gibraltar Day in London, I believe he's away from the UK.
I understand that there is a meeting of the General Affairs Council of the European Parliament on Monday and on Tuesday, and therefore the Foreign Secretary and the Minister for Europe will be attending that very important meeting to set the budget for the EU for the next 7 years.
One final question, if I may. If these delays are linked to the curbing of tobacco smuggling, will your government take drastic measures to help clamp down on that tobacco? Only this week, for example, we've had concerns from residents of Glasses and Laguna estates.
And as you know, I have been as concerned about the issues of Laguna and Glasses estate and have been working with the customs authorities and with the police to devise those parts of a plan to curtail activity in those residential areas as might be the responsibility of the government of Gibraltar and my responsibility as Chief Minister. One of the issues that I've already told the people in those estates we're looking at is designating them special zones under the Tobacco Act to get people to give greater power to customs officers and to RGP officers to deal with the antisocial behavior that tobacco sales are creating in those estates. But what we are not going to do ever, James, on tobacco, fishing, WEFA or anything else is react to this sort of bully boy tactics from the fascists in Madrid.
Your message to those in Gibraltar angry and concerned about these latest delays?
I share their anger, I share their concern. I'm doing everything in the power of the government of Gibraltar to ensure that we put a stop to this.
Chief Minister Fabian Picardo, thank you very much for joining us on our special edition of Newswatch and talking to us from London this evening.
Thank you very much. Good night.
We appreciate your time, and the opposition has also condemned the delays. It says it does so in the strongest possible terms, the illegal use of the frontier as retaliation against Gibraltar and ordinary citizens from both sides of the frontier who cross it daily. The GSD says Gibraltar has not seen queues this long since the days of César Vraña, and that it will be making a full considered statement tomorrow. And the Royal Gibraltar Police and HEO officers have been working hard all day to try and minimise the impact of the frontier delays. 36 officers have been deployed for this operation alone. But apart from the impact on traffic, there's also a human element. Diabetics unable to access insulin, children and elderly people made to wait in the heat, and the disruption to residents along Devil's Tower Road and Sir Herbert Miles Road. Well, Jonathan Scott has tonight been speaking to Chief Inspector Richard Alger.
Well, this all started off about 9:30 this morning when we had initial reports from our officers that there were long delays trying to get across into Spain. As a result of that, by about 1100 hours, we had to implement our traffic management plan, whereby we shifted traffic into Devil's Tower Road. And ever since then, we've had traffic in Devil's Tower Road all the way into Eastern Beach, back onto Devil's Tower Road again, Sir Herbert Miles Road, and up to Dudley Ward Tunnel, with reports of up to 6 hours crossing time to get into Spain.
I mean, our cameras have been there all weekend, and we have witnessed for ourselves the way that the Guardia Civil officers are taking 2-3 minutes to check practically every vehicle that's crossing the frontier, which appears to me to be a lot more stringent and a lot tighter checks than they have been doing for, well, as far as I can remember, really.
Well, unfortunately, the delays have had a massive impact on our roads today, yes. On an average, every half hour we do about 150 to 300 cars every half hour, and that's on a good day. And today we've been averaging 30 to 60 cars in an hour at times. So that's very, very poor traffic flow into the frontier, and then what it does have is a negative impact on our roads. We're very cognizant of the fact that people are suffering. The neighbourhood in Laguna Estate and you know, people who live down at Catalan Bay, Caleta Palace Hotel and both worlds. Unfortunately, we've got nowhere else to put our vehicles, and we have to keep the town area clear of vehicles, particularly for emergency response vehicles.
Are there any issues at all as far as you're concerned with emergency response access to the North District areas that you've mentioned, such as Laguna and Catalan Bay?
No, and exactly this is why we do what we do in implementing this traffic management plan. It's to ensure that all access roads are kept free, and we're happy that we've done that. But again, you know, the Road Gibraltar Police does apologise to the people who live in the areas of Laguna, etc., like I've mentioned before, because of the impact it has on their lives as well.
So we're talking about noise and air pollution, I suppose.
Of course, noise. You know, we do know for a fact that, you know, the unfortunate people who are queuing up in their cars have been, you know, sounding their horns and in annoyance and in anger, of course, and we have to understand their point of view as well. We've seen young children today, very young children in cars, sitting in their cars for 3, 4 hours, 5 hours, elderly people as well, and we've had to come to assistance to a few of them as well. So there's a humane factor as well here.
Can you talk us through what, the way that the queue is being managed at the moment? Richard was speaking to you at 9 o'clock on a Sunday evening. We can see that you're obviously trying to keep the runway clear, but so vehicles are being allowed across to the other side, and you're trying to keep the runway clear. Is that right?
At this present moment in time, the airfield is operational. I mean, it is just gone 8:30. It's still operational. We're hoping to be implementing the next phase across the runway, and what that does, it alleviates somewhat Devil Star Road.
Okay. You mentioned the children there, and you know, there's obviously a human impact for those trying to cross the frontier. As far as I can tell, probably 90% of them, if not 95, are Spanish registered cars. So these are people who perhaps have come in to do a bit of shopping, to fill up with petrol, but there might be children in the back, there might be elderly people. We have spoken to somebody who has suffered from diabetes. Is there any advice that the RGP can issue to people on either side of the border who are thinking of using their cars, perhaps to cross into Spain or just in the North District, to try and minimise that human impact?
Well, yeah, first and foremost, we're advising local people who reside in Gibraltar to avoid coming into this area as much as possible. But obviously people live here and they've got to go from A to B, and that's understandable. And we'll try and manage that as best as we can. For those people wishing to visit Gibraltar, you know, it is very unfortunate that they have to go through this experience, and what we will try and do is facilitate their journey as best as we can. Unfortunately, you know, when you're stuck in a queue for 4 or 5 hours, it's very unpleasant. And like I said, we did have, you know, we have seen young children, you know, somewhat distressed in the vehicles, upset. And we've seen elderly people, like you say, requiring medication, requiring, you know, the need to get back to Spain as soon as possible to get that medication. So, you know, our officers are trying to facilitate everyone as best as we can, yes.
And water's been handed out. I suppose the advice would be as well to try and come stocked up with a snack and some fluids, and if you are somebody who needs medicine, to try and bring that with you, because the queues are unpredictable at the moment.
Yes, come prepared. I mean, we don't know how long this is going to last, and if you do intend bringing your vehicles into Gibraltar, come prepared and expect lengthy delays if this continues for quite some time.
Okay, Chief Inspector Alger, many thanks for joining us.
That's Chief Inspector Richard Alger from the Royal Gibraltar Police talking to Jonathan Scott. And the work of the RGP and HEOs has been praised by the Chief Minister on Twitter tonight. He wrote, "RGP and HEOs working hard to ensure smooth flow of traffic. Excellent job." And the latest from the frontier, as we've been reporting tonight, is that the queue has now cleared. Well, you've been watching GBC and listening to Radio Gibraltar on Sunday, 14th of October, when frontier queues peaked at 6 hours the worst yet in what has been a week of long delays at the frontier. The government has called a cabinet meeting for tomorrow morning, and this evening the Chief Minister, who is in London, has said his government is liaising with the Foreign Office over what he calls Spain's illegal acts. He told GBC bullying will not be tolerated. For their part, the RGP has been trying to alleviate the build-up of traffic and earlier were advising the public to avoid Devil's Tower Road and Sir Herbert Miles Road if at all possible. That's our special coverage this evening on GBC Television and Radio Gibraltar. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Good night.
Occasion for people who might be thinking of